Bahrain 55.
Good evening and welcome to Channel 55's Highlights program, a new program that discusses issues. Good evening and welcome to Channel 55's Highlights program, a program that discusses issues which affects us and you. Our program will be a weekly program every Tuesday at 8 p.m. We will be inviting guest speakers who will be discussing a variety of issues. Our topic today is a topic of great importance. It is an illness which has grown to become a major epidemic. Unfortunately, until today, no cure has been found. AIDS stands for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome, and AIDS is caused by human immunodeficiency virus, better known as HIV. Infection with HIV can weaken the immune system to the point that it has difficulty fighting off certain infections. These types of infections are better known as opportunistic infections because they take the opportunity of the weakness of the immune system to attack the bodies. So when a person is normally healthy, these infections don't exist. That's why no cures are available for these infections, because in reality they don't exist. Many of the infections that cause problems or may be life-threatening for people with AIDS are usually controlled by a healthy immune system. The immune system of a person with AIDS is weakened to the point that medical intervention is necessary to cure the illness. Today, there are medical treatments that can slow down the rate at which HIV weakens the immune system. There are other treatments that can prevent or cure some of the illnesses that are caused by AIDS. As with other diseases, illnesses associated with AIDS can be cured, but the disease itself, which is AIDS, cannot be cured, unfortunately. With me in the studio to discuss this important issue is Dr. Sumaya Al-Jodar, and she is the head of the Naim Health Center Council and chairman of the HIV Counseling Committee. Dr. Sumaya, welcome you.
Welcome.
And of course, also with me is Dr. Badr Al-Hassan, the head of the Public Health Laboratories. Good evening, Dr. Badr, and we appreciate you coming and joining us in this program.
Thank you.
I would like to first start with Dr. Sumaya. Dr. Sumaya, what is HIV?
HIV is standard for human immunodeficiency syndrome, and it is caused by a human immunodeficiency virus. And it is classes of retrovirus, and this virus, once it's tackle the lymphocyte, it's called CD4. And once this virus enter the blood circulation, the person will be infected HIV positive. And actually it's called syndrome because it's containing many symptoms together, not just one signs. And it should be not just one by one, it should be all together, at least like fever persisting more than 1 month, and loss of weight more than 10% of the total his body, and diarrhea continuous for 1 month, and enlarged lymph node, and rashes and all over the body.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Badr, where did this HIV come from? Prior to the 80s, nobody knew about this illness. In 1981, the first case was reported in the United States. Sure. Was this illness ever available before that, and we never knew about it because our detecting systems at that time was not advanced? Or was this just a new modified virus which came out in 1981?
Actually, retrospective testing has shown, from samples preserved from the period before 1981, that there were some cases that had occurred due to AIDS virus prior to that period. And these were samples collected like for places like in Centers for Disease Control, and when they had the disease symptoms, when they went back to the data bank and they looked at people that had died, with the same type of symptoms, they took out those samples, and some of them did test positive, and they were from period as early as 10 years prior to 1981. So it was there, except that it was noticed when it came as an epidemic, and there were a big number of cases in a particular group of high-risk group people, that it was identified as a disease.
Mm-hmm. As you said, today Highlights is discussing the topic of AIDS. If you'd like to join us in our program, our telephone numbers are 682253 and our fax number is 870112. And of course our email is highlights, HILIGHTS, @bahraintv.com. Dr. Sumaya, how is HIV transmitted?
Now have been sure that only 3 ways for transmission of HIV. The main issue will be by sex, either heterosexual, either homosexual, and through IV drug by sharing the needles, and from mother to child. We call it vertical transmission, and it is either through the pregnancy, either during labor or delivery, or rapidly after breastfeeding in early state.
So does that mean if an HIV mother is breastfeeding her child, the child will get infected?
Actually, we advise for developing country who's available artificial milk is better to breastfeed artificial, but like country like poor like African, because they will maybe died more from diarrhea more than for that countries. We have been even WHO advise they are not to stop breastfeeding, but like other modern countries like Bahrain usually advise her HIV positive mother is better to artificial feeding better than breastfeeding, to be ensure that no percent transfer by breastfeeding, because during pregnancy we are giving medication AZT to prevent this transmission during pregnancy and during labor. But to enhance sure 100% to not to get the baby, for that we advise also for artificial breastfeeding. The only way I'm advising the mother not to breastfeeding only for HIV births. Until now we advise for artificial milk.
Mm-hmm. Doctor, I have with me some statistics with regard to some of the countries and the cases of AIDS. For example, in India it's been reported that the adults infected with HIV is from 3 to 5 million. Africa is one of the most countries affected. For example, in Botswana, it's 1 in 3, and the population is 1.5 million. So that's quite big. Yes. What is the current figure of AIDS or HIV infected people worldwide?
Worldwide, when you talk worldwide, there's like 36.1 million suspected HIV cases living today. Mm-hmm. And since the epidemic, 22 million have already died. Okay, and the situation right now is that 70% of the cases that occurred during the last statistic were from sub-Saharan countries. So that's 70% of the total number of cases that were detected, all over the world were from the sub-Saharan countries. In most countries, it has plateaued now. It has plateaued because of intervention, because of health education, mainly health education.
I comment. I think because from '96 have been discovered the AZT. Mm-hmm. I have been regarding the literature review. They say the plateau most probably for the medication. Mm-hmm. Because in study in Italian have been found that about 30% have been reduced after introduced medication. Because the education is good, the only thing we have it, but still there is when have been study regarding education and the practice behavior. Still it is not any education is enough to change behavior, because we have to be sure that HIV it is behavior disease. It's behavior. Yeah, and it is regarding relationship between at least 2 persons.
Thank you.
Highlights. And as we've just seen, because no vaccine is available for HIV, the only way to prevent infection by the virus is to avoid behaviors that puts a person at risk of infection, such as sharing needles and having unprotected sex. We thank you for being with us, and if you want to join us next week, our topic will be about obesity, where we probe into the causes of obesity and how to overcome them. You can join us and telephone us on 682253. Our faxes are 870-112. And of course, you can email us on highlights, that's HILIGHTS, at bahraintv.com. That's all lowercase. And we thank you again for joining us on Highlights. See you next week.
Bahrain 55.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of Islands Weekly. Every Thursday we will bring you a roundup of Islands events, plus inform you of what's on during the coming week. Regular features will include a preview of the next week's films, and we have some good viewing coming up for you this week. Plus, from the comfort of your lounge room, we will take you on a tour of Bahrain's heritage high spots. Well, now without further ado, it's on to our first feature. The Lioness Club of Bahrain held a ladies' night on Thursday at the Diplomat Hotel. The evening allowed everyone to have a glimpse at aspects of local culture. The club's president, Camelia Ahmed, and Cheryl Jennings Blanchet, the vice president, spoke about what has become a very successful fundraising event. Can you tell me a little bit about the Lionesses, how they were formed?
Our club is rather young. We started in March of this year, and we operate under the wing of the Lions Club. Since March, we've recruited 25 very active members, young ladies, mostly Bahrainis, and thanks to their enthusiasm, the success of tonight's event is very evident.
And where's the fund? Where are the funds going towards?
Well, I'll let Cheryl talk about that, because she was the believer that we should put of our efforts this year, all of our efforts, towards one particular objective.
Well, the inspiration behind our fundraising, in part, is due to the fact that I had a son at Somania Hospital who was very premature, and I found myself, not unlike a lot of women in Bahrain, in need of a special care baby unit in order to save my son's life. We felt it was an appropriate charity cause to donate all of our funds towards buying more hospital equipment in order to support the good and the excellent care that infants do receive in Bahrain, so that future generations of Bahrainis will find less of a mortality rate that has existed in the past. One of the wonderful things about Bahrain, though, is that we find all kind of harmonious atmosphere with other charitable organizations. The Indian Ladies Organization, the Hope
International
Institute, the International Women, the Rotary, the Lions Club. We all come together for most of our events, such as this one tonight, which is our Ladies' Night.
Tonight's event's been quite successful. There's been a lot of people in there and a mixture of
Exactly.
all
This,
nationalities.
this is part of our objectives, to try to bring the different nationalities together and have a culture exchange. We don't want the expatriates to come here and walk away with a suntan and good memories. We want them to walk away with an understanding of what the Bahraini culture is all about.
Well, we've showed the henna night before the wedding night, so that could be an eye-opener for actually what goes on. It's very mysterious.
Well, we are taking it one step at a time. We don't want to explore everything that there is to explore in one evening.
At every event, you pick on a Bahraini culture or a tradition, and
Exactly,
you show it.
exactly. We are here, we are living in Bahrain, and we want everybody to feel just how we love this island. I mean, it's very genuine.
So is
We
it a
want
pattern?
everybody. Well, it is a pattern until we explore everything there is to explore about the island. I
There
mean,
will be future events.
oh, definitely,
Oh,
definitely.
definitely.
And lots of women who walk out of our parties ask, when is the next event? I mean, they're that excited about it.
In fact, next year we have organized in the early spring a 1001 Arabian Nights, in which our theme is surrounded by, again, kind of a typical relaxing home evening in the Arab tradition.
And what did tonight's program consist of?
We had the fashion show, we had the henna, and now we have the traditional music. And I think we have to get back and start welcoming our guests to the dancing stage, because there's a lot of teaching to be done.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I never knew how much I loved you. I never knew how much I cared. So I played vicious games with different names. Vicious games.
Next week, we will be going green with Dr. Ismail Madani as he talks about the recycling of domestic waste. The rich heritage of Indian music will be featured with excerpts from the Hindustani classical music concert. Plus, we will be taking a look at some of Bahrain's actors as they perform the famous Dylan Thomas play Under Milkwood. Well, that's all from Ireland's Weekly for tonight. We hope that you have enjoyed the program and look forward to seeing you again next week. If you do have any interesting items that you think we should cover, please write to Ireland's Weekly, Bahrain Television, P.O. Box 1075, Bahrain. And that's all from me for this evening. Take care and have a safe and happy week. Bye for now.
Bahrain 55.
Hello and welcome to the programme. Today's topic under review is a difficult and somewhat uncomfortable one because it involves the most innocent members of society, children. Child abuse can come in many forms and can happen in the most unlikely families. My guest today is Dr. Akbar Mohsen Mohammed, Professor and Chairman of Paediatrics at the College of Medicine at the Arabian Gulf University and Vice Chairman of an up-and-coming conference on protecting children from abuse. Dr. Akbar, thank you for joining us, and we're talking to you today in your capacity of Vice Chairman of the Organising Committee on an up-and-coming conference on child protection from abuse and neglect, which is going to be hosted here in Bahrain in October. Could you tell us a little bit about the conference?
Yes, Bahrain Child Development Society every year, has some project that's related to child affairs, children affairs. And this year we decided that children, being a very weak link in the family, they are subject to abuse and neglect, and we thought we shed some light on this problem by having a regional conference in Bahrain that will deal with every aspect of the problem as such.
What are the long and short-term goals of the conference?
Well, at the outset we need to highlight and create an awareness, public awareness, that the problem does exist, because what we see is just the tip of the iceberg at the moment. And we need to see more of what is happening, the real size of the problem, and this cannot be achieved unless there is awareness. And we hope to create this awareness not only in the specialized people or people who are directly concerned, but in public at large. And we hope that we have experience from all the region pooled into this conference. And by having this, we will learn from each other, and we rub shoulders during the conference, and at the same time exchange experiences and come up with something that is practical and suitable for the area and how to deal with the problem as such.
You said bring it out into the open. Is it still a taboo subject here in Bahrain? Are people still embarrassed to talk about it?
It is, in a way, because it's something, especially certain types of abuse, more than others. If you talk about, when we talk about types of abuse, like sexual abuse, is more hush-hushed and it's more taboo than physical abuse. And so we think that some sorts of abuse are still not being declared. And if we take the abuse in its broad sense, there is definitely neglect as such, is something that people do not consider as something as abuse, but neglect as such is really abuse.
Who will attend?
Well, we have extended invitation to all representatives from all the Arab world, and plus some others who are coming from UK and also United States of America.
What, for instance, are the most pressing or urgent areas of emphasis at the moment for you as one of the organisers?
Yeah, I think what's the main concern here is that we don't have legislations that really enforce protection of children when they are subjected to abuse. And we hope that ultimately we focus on this aspect, namely legislation that's given to a national committee that will be able to enforce and take action promptly to deal with the problems as they occur, depending on the problem and type of the problem.
So you want an organisation with teeth, something that can actually work.
Absolutely.
So are you looking at maybe forming some form of national committee for the protection of children, maybe along the lines of the NSPCC in the United Kingdom or other similar organisations in Europe?
Yes, at the moment we have a small national committee, but in its composition is still not complete, and also the authorities it has is not adequate. So we hope to have more representation of all parties concerned in this committee and to be given some authority to handle problems promptly.
So when you talk about this legislation, what you really want is strong laws that can be used to back up your work effectively and instantly.
Absolutely, and we need not only legislation but legislation that are implementable, that the committee can without hesitation.
How would you, as a doctor, define abuse? You've mentioned just now that there are many different forms.
Yeah, well, abuse is any intentional harm done to the child, starting from neglect to fatal situations where the child's life is being jeopardized. Any sort of direct or indirect deliberate harm that the child is subjected to is considered abuse. And people do not, agree with this definition. Not all people agree with this definition, but this is true. We don't talk about accidental harm. We talk about deliberate harm, where a member of the family or outside the family subjects the child to any kind of harm, be that physical, emotional, neglect, or sexual abuse. All these fall into the definition of abuse.
So what sort of categories of abuse do you see during the course of your work at the hospital and with the Child Development Society? Do you see
Well,
all
Child
types?
Development Society does not have a service for these children, so we don't deal with the problem at the society. But in the hospital, and especially in the emergency room, we see all spectrum of the neglect, the abuse, be that malnutrition as a result of neglect, to child brought dead on arrival. And unfortunately, we had a suspected case even yesterday, a child 9-month-old brought dead on arrival. So we can see, and we see the physical abuse as well as sexual abuse that are brought to our attention in the hospital.
How could these things actually happen in Bahrain, though? It's such a caring society and where people just love their children so much. In fact, I'd even go as far as to say Bahrainis seem to almost live for their children. How can this happen?
Well, Bahraini society is no exception like anywhere else. There are a lot of social problems, and there are social problems. Moreover, people who abuse others happen most of the time to have been abused themselves. So we have such people who have, for one reason or another, they have been abused themselves, and they tend to subject their own children to this kind of abuse.
Thank you very much for talking to us, and best of luck with the conference.
Well, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk about this conference and highlight certain important messages.
And that's all from the programme until next week, when you can join me at the same time and the same place for review. See you then, and God bless.